My sister-in-law laughed in my face and called me a worthless housewife in front of our entire family. She had no idea that the very next morning, I was the one who would decide the fate of her entire company. If you've ever been made to feel small, if you've ever been judged by someone who didn't know the first thing about you, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Smash that like button if you believe in karma, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to put someone in their place. This is the story of how I did just that, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this. It all started at what was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday dinner. The air in my in-laws' dining room was always thick with the scent of roasted rosemary chicken and unspoken tensions. It was a beautiful room, all polished mahogany and crystal glasses that chimed with the slightest touch, but it often felt more like a courtroom than a place of family gathering. And the presiding judge was always my husband Mark's older sister, Cynthia. To say Cynthia and I were different is an understatement. She was a hurricane in a Chanel suit, a woman who didn't just enter a room but conquered it. Her life was a series of press releases and shareholder meetings, her phone a constantly buzzing appendage that signaled her importance. I, on the other hand, had recently chosen a quieter path. After a decade in the relentless world of international corporate strategy, a world that had left me feeling burnt out and disconnected, I had stepped back. I wanted to recharge, to support Mark as he launched his own architectural firm, to simply breathe. We had decided together that my savings and investments were more than enough to allow me this period of quiet, and I relished it. I gardened, I read, I managed our finances, and I provided the stable, calm foundation that Mark needed to build his dream. But to Cynthia, my choice wasn't a strategic retreat, it was an absolute surrender. In her eyes, I had gone from being a potential equal to being a nobody, a decorative wife for her successful brother. That evening, she was in rare form. Her company, Sterling Corp., was on the verge of landing a transformative partnership with a massive, almost mythical international conglomerate called Viridian Dynamics. The deal was all she could talk about, her words painting a picture of a future where she was an untouchable titan of industry. The due diligence is staggering, she announced to the table, taking a delicate sip of her wine. Her eyes scanned the room, making sure everyone was paying attention. We are talking about a multi-billion-dollar synergy. Viridian doesn't just partner with anyone. Their standards are astronomical. You have to be the absolute best. It's a world most people can't even comprehend. Her gaze flickered over to me for a fraction of a second, a tiny, dismissive glance that was meant to say, especially you. I just smiled politely and focused on cutting my chicken, the porcelain of the plate cool beneath my knife. I had learned that engaging with Cynthia was like wrestling a pig in mud, you both get dirty, and the pig likes it. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, a silent apology for his sister's relentless ego. He knew how she was, but family is family, a tangled web of obligations you can't easily escape. The conversation droned on, a monologue of Cynthia's achievements. She talked about her grueling schedule, her brilliant legal team, the sheer intellectual firepower required to navigate such a complex deal. Each sentence was designed to elevate herself, while subtly diminishing everyone else at the table. My father-in-law listened with paternal pride, while my mother-in-law just nodded along, her expression placid. They were used to the Cynthia show. Then, my well-meaning but utterly oblivious Aunt Carol turned to me. "Elara, dear," she said, her voice warm and genuine. "Cynthia is so impressive. What did you used to do before you and Mark settled down? I remember you were in business too, weren't you?" The entire table fell silent. It was as if a spotlight had suddenly swung in my direction. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes on me, but most intensely, I felt Cynthia's. Hers were narrowed, a predatory gleam in them. She was waiting, hoping I'd say something she could tear apart. I kept my voice even, calm. "I was in corporate development for a while," I said vaguely. "Mostly focused on strategic acquisitions and international market entry." I tried to leave it at that, to steer the conversation away, but Cynthia saw her opening. She let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a sound of amusement, it was a weapon. "Oh, that is just adorable," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "A little corporate development, was that from a weekend seminar, Ilara? Or did it come with your subscription to Business for Dummies?" The jab landed, and a few awkward titters went around the table. Mark stiffened beside me. "Cynthia, that's enough," he said, his voice low and firm. But she waved a dismissive hand at him, her eyes still locked on me. No, it's fine, Mark. I'm just fascinated. Please, Ilara, tell us more about these strategic acquisitions. Did you acquire a new brand of coffee for the break room? Or perhaps you strategically acquired a better deal on paper clips?" She leaned forward, her smile a cruel slash of red lipstick. "Sweetheart, let me give you some advice. The world I operate in, the world of Viridian Dynamics, it isn't for hobbyists. It's a shark tank. You wouldn't last 10 seconds. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot wave that washed over my face. She wasn't just mocking my past, she was erasing it, rewriting me as a foolish, incompetent woman who played at business. She was defining me for everyone at that table. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list my accomplishments, the multi-million-dollar deals I'd brokered, the impossible negotiations I'd won. I wanted to tell her that the shark tank she was so proud of swimming in was a pond I had helped design. But I didn't. I held Mark's hand tighter, a signal for him to stand down. A public fight would only make things worse, giving her the drama she craved. Seeing my silence as victory, Cynthia went in for the kill. She turned her address to the entire table, her voice booming with theatrical pity. "Honestly, Mark, I don't know how you do it. My brother, the brilliant architect, a true innovator, and he's married to, well, a professional lunchmaker." She paused for effect, letting the insult hang in the air. "I guess someone has to make sure the pantry is stocked. That did it." A few people laughed uncomfortably. My mother-in-law stared at her plate. My father-in-law cleared his throat. It was a masterclass in public degradation. Cynthia then looked directly at me, her face a mask of false sincerity. "Stick to your little garden, Ilara," she said, her voice softening into a patronizing purr. "It's where you belong. Some of us have empires to build." I just nodded, a tight, forced smile plastered on my face. Inside, a cold, quiet rage was beginning to solidify. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of forced pleasantries. I excused myself as soon as dessert was served, claiming a headache. Mark followed me immediately, his face a thundercloud of anger. The car ride home was silent until he finally broke. "I am so sorry, Ilara. She's out of control. I should have said more, I should have stopped her." I placed a hand on his arm. "It's not your fault, Mark. You can't control her. But she's wrong about me. So incredibly wrong." He looked at me, his eyes full of concern. "I know that. You're the most brilliant person I know. You just don't feel the need to broadcast it every second of the day like she does." That night, I couldn't sleep. Cynthia's words echoed in my mind, each one a tiny, sharp sting. A professional lunchmaker, stick to your little garden. The sheer arrogance of it was breathtaking. She hadn't just insulted me, she had dismissed my entire existence, my intellect, my past, my choices. She had judged the book by a cover I had deliberately chosen for a period of peace and quiet, and she had found it wanting. I slipped out of bed and went to my home office, the one room in the house that was exclusively mine. The glow of my 3 monitors cast a soft blue light on the walls. Mark thought I used this room to manage our investments and dabble in some light consulting. He didn't know the full story. No one did. That was by design. I sat down in my leather chair and woke up the main screen. There it was, the sleek, minimalist logo of Viridian Dynamics. An email chain filled the screen, a back and forth between my team and the executive board of Sterling Corporation, Cynthia's company. My company. You see, Viridian Dynamics wasn't just a conglomerate I admired from afar. I was one of its architects. Years ago, I had co-founded it with two partners under a veil of anonymity, building it into a global powerhouse through a series of aggressive, strategic acquisitions. My role had always been behind the scenes. I was the strategist, the ghost in the machine who identified the targets and structured the deals. My public-facing partners were the ones who graced the magazine covers. It was an arrangement that suited my personality perfectly. I didn't need the fame, I craved the challenge, the intellectual game of it all. My name, Ilara Vance, was known only to a handful of people at the very top. Officially, all major acquisitions were signed off by E. Vance, a deliberately ambiguous and powerful figurehead. That figurehead was me. Taking a step back to support Mark didn't mean I had quit. It meant I had delegated my day-to-day responsibilities to a trusted team, allowing me to work remotely and focus only on the biggest, most critical decisions. Like the Sterling Corp partnership. I had been overseeing the deal from the beginning. I had read every line of their proposal, analyzed every financial projection. I knew more about Cynthia's company than she probably did. And honestly, I had been impressed. Sterling Corp was a solid company with good fundamentals. The partnership would have been mutually beneficial. I was prepared to sign off on it. But that was before dinner. That was before she had shown me the character of the person who led that company. A fundamental misalignment of corporate values and leadership ethos, that was the standard rejection clause my team used when a potential partner's leadership proved to be toxic, arrogant, or unethical. Viridian built empires, yes, but we built them on a foundation of respect. We partnered with visionaries, not tyrants. We valued integrity as much as innovation. Cynthia, in her blind arrogance, had just shown me she possessed none. I opened the file containing the two final contract drafts. One was the approval, a document that would make Cynthia's career and fortune. The other was the termination notice. It was a simple, two-paragraph letter, professionally cold and brutally final. My finger hovered over the mouse. I thought about her smug face, the sound of her condescending laugh. I thought about the hurt in Mark's eyes, the uncomfortable silence of our family. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about consequences. It was about a lesson that Cynthia desperately needed to learn. A lesson about humility, about respect, about the danger of underestimating the person right in front of you. With a steady hand, I attached the termination notice to a new email, addressed it to Cynthia's entire executive board, and copied in my legal team. The subject line was simple: regarding the proposed Sterling Corp. And Viridian Dynamics partnership. I typed a single sentence in the body of the email. After final review, we have decided to terminate negotiations. Please see the attached document for our official position, and then, with a quiet click, I sent it. A sense of profound calm washed over me. I shut down the computer, went back to bed, and for the first time all night, I slept soundly. My phone rang at precisely 8:01 the next morning. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, at 8:03. And again, at 8:05. On the fourth try, I answered, putting it on speaker. Mark was in the kitchen making coffee, and looked over with a questioning glance. "Hello," I said, my voice perfectly neutral. "Ilara." "Oh, thank God you answered." It was Cynthia. Her voice was unrecognizable. The polished, commanding tone was gone, replaced by a high-pitched, frantic panic. "Ilara, something terrible has happened. I don't know who else to call. The Viridian deal, it's gone. They cancelled it. It was just cancelled. Out of the blue, this morning. An email. It was so cold, it mentioned leadership ethos. What does that even mean? My board is going insane. My stock is going to plummet. My company might be ruined. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, savoring the delicious, karmic irony of it all. She had called me, the worthless housewife, in her moment of absolute crisis. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my tea. Mark was watching me, his eyes wide with confusion. He knew something was happening. It means, Cynthia, I said, and my voice was no longer meek or polite. It was calm, clear, and imbued with an authority she had never heard from me before. That Viridian Dynamics doesn't partner with bullies. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her ragged breathing. What are you talking about? What does that have to do with you? She finally stammered. This was the moment. The culmination of years of quiet tolerance, of biting my tongue, of allowing her to define me. It was time for her to see the real me. You were so busy judging the woman you thought was just a housewife, that you never bothered to do your own due diligence, Cynthia. You never bothered to look past your own prejudice to see who was really sitting across the table from you. I paused, letting the words sink in. You see, Viridian's head of acquisitions, the person who holds the final say on all major partnerships, the one who makes the final call, is me. I let my maiden name drop like a stone into a silent pool. E. Vance. Elara Vance. The silence that followed was absolute. It was so profound I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I could picture her perfectly, her face, a canvas of shock and dawning horror. The color draining away, the arrogant smirk replaced by a slack-jawed disbelief. The entire world she had built, the superiority she had lorded over everyone, was crumbling around her, and the person holding the detonator was the very woman she had dismissed as insignificant. But you can't be, she whispered, her voice a thread. I'm just what, Cynthia? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. A professional lunch maker. Someone who should stick to her garden. You told me some of us have empires to build. You were right. I've been building mine for years. You just weren't important enough to notice. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply stated the facts, and the truth was more devastating than any insult I could have hurled. Respect isn't something you earn with a fancy title or a big bank account, Cynthia. It's a basic requirement for partnership. It's the cost of entry. And last night, you showed me you're bankrupt. You failed the test. I suggest you remember that, and with that, I ended the call. The silence in our kitchen was deafening. Mark just stared at me, his coffee cup halfway to his lips, his expression a mixture of awe and utter shock. He slowly put the cup down. Elara Vance? E. Vance. You're. I just nodded, a small smile playing on my lips. He walked over and wrapped his arms around me, holding me tight. You are the most incredible woman I have ever known, he whispered into my hair, and I knew he meant it more than ever before. I looked out the window at my garden, the one Cynthia had told me to stick to. The sun was shining, the flowers were in bloom, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a perfect, unshakable sense of peace. My worth had never been tied to her opinion, but there was a deep, satisfying justice in her finally being forced to see it. So never let anyone's judgment define you. Never let their small-mindedness make you feel small. The quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. They just don't feel the need to prove it, until they absolutely have to. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this one, and always remember to be kind. You truly never, ever know who you're talking to.